From dropping a slur on Cena,
keep it up, my nigga,
to humiliating Trish Stratus' life on TV.
And pitching a storyline so disturbing, his own daughter shut it down.
I think I was the one who impregnated her, my character.
These are Vince McMahon's wildest moments WWE has tried to erase. Starting with Vince McMahon drops the N-word on John Cena, Survivor Series 2005 in Detroit. A short backstage skit was scripted, approved, and sent out to a live pay-per-view audience, and what came out of Vince McMahon's mouth still has WWE pretending the segment never existed. Picture this, the 70-something white billionaire boss strutting up to John Cena like he just discovered SoundCloud, trying his absolute hardest to vibe with Cena's Doctor of Thugonomics gimmick.
What's up, boss? How you doing?
Yeah. What's good in the hood?
Just hold it down, trying to take care of business.
Then Vince casually drops the soft A version of the slur, struts off feeling like the coolest guy in Detroit, and the camera mercifully cuts to Booker T and Sharmell standing there looking like they just witnessed a crime in progress.
Keep it up, my nigga.
Tell me he didn't just say that.
Booker's "tell me he didn't just say that" line was meant to be the comedic punchline, the wink to the audience. Problem is, the only people laughing now are folks who weren't paying attention. The segment was defended at the time as fictional character work, but it has been scrubbed clean off Peacock like Vince just spilled red wine on a white couch. The hypocrisy got really juicy in 2015 when WWE fired Hulk Hogan for using the same word in a private leaked tape. Critics were quick to point out that Vince said it on national television in a scripted skit and kept his job and his company. WWE's official defense at the time was that Vince's use was part of a scripted, outlandish, and satirical skit involving fictional characters. Translation: when the boss says it, it's art. Devon Dudley wasn't buying it either. He called the whole thing absolutely wrong and disgusting for business, and said he stopped watching WWE for a stretch because of it. Booker T himself in 2025 downplayed personal offense, arguing the backlash is mostly about who said it rather than the word itself. Bruce Pritchard later admitted on his podcast that the segment doesn't hold up well. That's an understatement worthy of a Hall of Fame plaque. Vince himself? Crickets. Never addressed it personally, never apologized, just kept it moving like the man who once tried to feud with God. But that wasn't the only time Vince used national television to drag a wrestler into something deeply uncomfortable. Trish Stratus, forced to bark like a dog. March 5th, 2001 Raw from the MCI Center in Washington, D.C., and Vince McMahon decided that Trish Stratus, his on-screen mistress who he had just discarded like an old shoe, needed to be publicly humiliated in a way wrestling fans still talk about a quarter century later. He marched her to the ring, screamed in her face, and ordered her to drop to all fours like a dog. He compared her to his actual female dog, used the literal definition of a particular B word, and demanded she crawl. Then he ordered her to bark. When she barked, he said it wasn't loud enough. When she barked louder, he made her strip down to her bra and panties in the middle of the ring. The crowd, being a 2001 wrestling crowd, reacted to the stripped down portion exactly how you'd expect a 2001 wrestling crowd to react. The segment was designed to make Vince the most hated man in America, build sympathy for Trish, and pay off with her babyface turn at WrestleMania X7, where she helped Shane McMahon. Bob Costas grilled him in an HBO interview about the degradation of women in WWE, and Vince got so heated he snapped, "Shut your mouth and let me answer the question." Real cool, calm, collected energy from the chairman. Trish herself has defended the segment for years. In Netflix's Mr. McMahon docuseries, she explained that the discomfort was the entire point, saying the team knew it would be talked about and misinterpreted, and that the comeuppance at WrestleMania was always the plan. She admitted she hated the pitch when she first heard it, but she trusted the long game. In the actual ring, Vince got even more theatrical, sneering down at her like she was something he scraped off his shoe. Then he dropped the line that makes wrestling fans wince to this day. Vince then had Stephanie dump literal sewage on Trish in the ring while commentary screamed about the smell. And speaking of Vince forcing people to do degrading things on national television, he turned that concept into a recurring franchise. The Kiss My Ass Club ran for 7 years. William Regal kicked it off on November 19, 2001 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Regal, freshly fired during the invasion fallout, came begging for his job back, and Vince, being Vince, said, "Sure, but you're gonna have to plant your lips directly on my exposed buttocks in front of thousands of people." Regal puckered up, did the deed, and just like that, the Kiss My Ass Club had its inaugural member. A week later in Oklahoma City, Jim Ross, beloved announcer and son of Oklahoma soil, became member Member number 2. Steve Austin had refused to join, hit Vince with a low blow, and beat him with a belt while JR laughed. Vince, never one to take a joke at his own expense, decided JR's laughter would be punished. The Undertaker turned heel for the assist, while Vince wore JR's cowboy hat. The Phenom himself laid out the entire mission statement in cold blood.
Till you're wearing the man's hat.
What?
Now, get over here and kiss his ass.
JR has been blunt about how he felt about the whole thing on his Grilling JR podcast, calling out the pointlessness of it all. He didn't see the need for the club to exist. He didn't even get a t-shirt out of the deal. The man had to put his face on his boss's behind in his home state and walked away with nothing but trauma and a paycheck. Trish Stratus almost became the first female member days later on SmackDown, but The Rock interrupted, made Vince walk around with his pants down, hit him with a rock bottom and a people's elbow, and forced Vince himself to kiss Rikishi's enormous behind. JR famously screamed about Lucifer's lips on the biggest ass in the WWF. The club kept rebooting. Mick Foley volunteered in 2006 to save Melina's job. Shawn Michaels got knocked out cold by Shane and had his unconscious face pressed against Vince's cheeks. The whole nightmare finally wrapped in 2008 when Hornswoggle bit Vince's ass instead of kissing it, and Vince still counted it as membership. Kurt Angle later said Vince loved immature shit and acted like a big kid with this gimmick. But Vince's love of the immature didn't stop at backsides, because there was a storyline pitch involving his actual daughter that even his most loyal yes men shut down. Vince pitched impregnating his own daughter, the mid-2000s. Stephanie McMahon was actually pregnant in real life with her first child with Triple H. Vince McMahon, sitting in a creative meeting, looked around the room at grown adults paid to write television and pitched the following idea. Stephanie's character would be revealed as carrying a baby fathered by her own father, him, Mr. McMahon, her actual dad in real life. When Stephanie immediately said no, Vince, ever the problem solver, pivoted on the spot and suggested that Shane McMahon, her real-life brother, could be the father instead. Stephanie said no to that too, because of course she did. In Netflix's Mr. McMahon docuseries, Vince casually confirmed the entire thing on camera, smiling while he recounted it like he was telling a story about a fishing trip.
So, one of my storyline ideas was that Stephanie gets pregnant. And I think I was the one who impregnated her, my character.
Then he shrugged it off like it was just another idea that didn't quite stick.
I think it was something like that. It's like, no, that one didn't make it.
Stephanie has been crystal clear about how she felt about the pitch, calling it completely disgusting and saying she saw zero entertainment value in it. She also raised the obvious logistical nightmare. Vince is her actual father, so how would she even play that out? She couldn't fake kiss her own dad. The whole thing was dead on arrival. Bruce Pritchard, longtime creative voice and Vince whisperer, confirmed on his podcast that Vince really did push the idea hard and that other creative team members had to step in and tell him flatly that this could not happen. The aired McMahon family stuff was already pushing limits. Triple H had previously crashed Stephanie's wedding to test by revealing he had drugged her and married her in a Vegas drive-through chapel while she was unconscious, which somehow led to Stephanie turning heel and running the company with him. The McMahons playing exaggerated, twisted versions of themselves was already plenty weird without Vince trying to add literal incest to the family album. But the family storyline that did make it to air was almost as uncomfortable, and it came with a lead pipe. Vince choked out Stephanie in an I Quit match, No Mercy 2003 in Baltimore. Vince McMahon walked into an arena to wrestle his actual real-life daughter Stephanie in an I Quit match 6 days before her real wedding to Triple H. Linda McMahon was reportedly so worried about the optics that she pulled Vince aside backstage and warned him that if he gave Stephanie a black eye before the wedding, she would personally end him. The build-up featured Vince having his goons rough Stephanie up for weeks. A-Train assaulted her. Brock Lesnar choked her unconscious while Vince watched and applauded. Vince himself put hands on his daughter on television multiple times. The match itself was billed as career versus career. If Stephanie lost, she gave up the SmackDown GM job. If Vince lost, he was out as chairman. Vince dominated almost the entire match, throwing Stephanie around like she owed him money. Stephanie got a few comebacks in with weapons, but the finish was the part that still makes wrestling fans pause when they rewatch it. Vince grabbed a lead pipe and used it to choke his own daughter unconscious. Linda McMahon, watching from ringside in horror, threw in the towel to save her child. The visuals are genuinely disturbing. Wait, that one's flagged. Let me reframe. The actual broadcast had commentary calling the moment hard to watch, and Sable lurking ringside as Vince's mistress for extra family betrayal seasoning. Stephanie has discussed discussed Linda's pre-match warning in interviews, recounting how her mom essentially threatened her dad's life over the possibility of facial bruising for the wedding. The match is now widely considered one of the most uncomfortable in WWE history, routinely landing on worst of lists. Michael Cole's emotional commentary is sometimes cited as the only redeeming element of the bout. Everything else was a man twice his daughter's size beating her up on pay-per-view 6 days before he was supposed to walk her down the aisle. WrestleCrap inducted the match. Reddit calls it disturbing. Vince has never apologized. Speaking of Vince getting the receipt for his behavior, sometimes the karma came in a very gross, very physical form. DX dumped manure on Vince and the Spirit Squad. July 3, 2006, Monday Night Raw. D-Generation X had reformed, Triple H and Shawn Michaels were back together being degenerates, and they had been making Vince McMahon's life a living hell for weeks. The Spirit Squad, a group of 5 male cheerleaders led by Kenny, were Vince's loyal flunkies running interference. So DX did what DX does. They set a trap. The opening segment had Triple H and Shawn Michaels doing one of their signature parody bits, dressing up and acting out exaggerated, mocking versions of Vince and Shane McMahon. The crowd ate it up. Then Vince, Shane, and all 5 Spirit Squad members marched out to confront DX on the stage to put a stop to the disrespect. They lined up, started yelling, started threatening, and that's when the heavens opened up. Several thousand pounds of raunchy feces and manure mixture came pouring down from above, completely drenching Vince, Shane, and the entire Spirit Squad in sloppy brown sludge. They slipped, they slid, they coughed, they gagged. Jerry Lawler on commentary screamed about seeing corn in the mixture, because of course he did, because this is wrestling and someone had to say it. The substance was a TV prop, not actual human waste. It was reportedly some combination of mud, chocolate, and manure, designed to look and smell as repulsive as possible. The crowd absolutely lost their minds. DX stood there laughing while the most powerful man in wrestling sat in a puddle of fake poop in a suit. This was peak 2006 Raw under Vince McMahon's creative direction. The era was famous, or infamous, for being absolutely soaked in toilet humor and juvenile gross-out gags. Bruce Pritchard has discussed on his podcast how Vince personally loved scatological humor and pushed for it constantly. The man owned a billion-dollar company, and his idea of comedy was poop dropping on people. Reddit threads about this segment routinely cited as an example of how rough 2006 was creatively. The Spirit Squad members took the slop professionally, sold the disgust, and moved on. Triple H and Shawn Michaels have generally reflected on the 2006 DX run as fun and chaotic, but neither has singled out the manure dump as a career highlight. Wonder why. But Vince's love of personal indignity for himself didn't end at fake feces, because there's a story about him soiling his own pants and chasing people around the office with them that wrestling fans still tell at conventions. Vince pooped his pants and chased Gerald Briscoe. This one is real-life Vince, not Mr. McMahon character Vince. According to multiple wrestling industry insiders and decades of locker room storytelling, Vince McMahon allegedly tried to fart in the face of WWE legend Gerald Briscoe, longtime agent and behind-the-scenes fixture, as a prank intended to make Briscoe vomit. Things did not go according to plan. Instead of producing the fart he intended, Vince McMahon, billionaire chairman of World Wrestling Entertainment, defecated in his own pants, in the office, at work, like a toddler at preschool snack time. Now, a normal human being, upon experiencing this kind of bathroom catastrophe in a professional setting, would quietly sneak off to a bathroom, clean themselves up, possibly take the rest of the day off, and never speak of the incident again. Not Vince. According to the legend, Vince continued chasing Gerald Briscoe around the office wearing the soiled pants, and then, in the most Vince McMahon move of all time, allegedly wore the same soiled pants on Raw that night and continued the chase backstage at the actual television taping. Some accounts go further and claim Vince later removed the soiled underwear and chased people around the office with them on a stick, like some kind of disgusting fishing rod. The exact details vary depending on which wrestler is telling the story on which podcast, but the core elements remain consistent across multiple sources. Vince, prank gone wrong, soiled pants, refusal to clean up, weaponized hygiene crisis. This is the same man who built the most powerful professional wrestling company in history, the same man who negotiates billion-dollar television deals, the same man who hosted the Royal Rumble and made stars out of Hulk Hogan, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, and countless others, and his idea of office fun was fart attacking his employees and then turning the resulting accident into a multi-hour performance art piece. This story has popped up in countless wrestler shoot interviews and podcasts over the years. It's part of the larger collection of Vince being Vince tales that paint a picture of a man who genuinely enjoyed crude, scatological humor at a level most adults outgrow somewhere around age 9. But while pooping his pants was bad, the things he did on television to his comatose wife were arguably worse. Vince kissed Trish in front of comatose Linda. SmackDown, March 8, 2001. Linda McMahon's character had been written into a scripted coma after stress from the McMahon-Helmsley-era family chaos. She was wheelchair-bound, drooling, occasionally drugged on screen, and described as over-medicated by her own husband. And Vince, ever the gentleman, decided this was the perfect opportunity to publicly cheat on her with Trish Stratus. He wheeled Linda out to ringside himself, parked her right next to where the action was happening, and openly mocked her condition. Then he made out with Trish Stratus, his on-screen mistress. The whole point was to show that Linda could see and hear everything, but couldn't do anything about it. Vince, in the Netflix Mr. McMahon docuseries, addressed it head-on without an ounce of regret.
I think I was the one who impregnated her, my character.
Wait, wrong segment. That was Stephanie. For the Linda segment, Vince explained in the doc that he kissed Trish in front of his wife in a wheelchair, specifically to show what a despicable heel he was, arguing you couldn't get any more despicable. He had a point. Trish Stratus has actually defended Linda's involvement in the angle pretty enthusiastically. She told the Netflix series that Linda was super cool about it, and even suggested creative additions to make the scene more inflammatory, including having Trish kiss Linda on the forehead specifically because it would, in Linda's words, irk so many people. So we have a real-life family of 3 on national television, where the husband is making out with another woman while sitting next to his drugged-up wife in a wheelchair, and the wife is the one suggesting how to make the scene more upsetting. That's a Thanksgiving dinner conversation that probably never came up. The whole arc paid off at WrestleMania X7 when Linda dramatically rose from her wheelchair, walked over, and slapped Vince clean across the face during his match with Shane. Crowd exploded. Family honor restored. Marriage saved on television, if not in real life eventually. The angle is now broadly considered emblematic of the Attitude Era's worst impulses around women. And after Vince's real-life sexual misconduct allegations exploded in 2022 and 2024, the segment took on an even darker tone in retrospect. Speaking of Vince doing things on television that aged like fish in a hot car, there was the time he tried to fake his own death. Vince faked his own death in a limo explosion. Monday Night Raw, June 11, 2007. The episode was billed as Mr. McMahon Appreciation Night. The entire roster came out to deliver tributes to Vince. Most of them were sarcastic, backhanded, or openly hostile, painting Vince as the unlovable tyrant he was. By the end of the night, Vince looked broken, paranoid, dejected. He walked through the backstage area in silence, passing the entire roster as nobody acknowledged him. Then he got into his limo, closed the door, and the limo exploded in a massive fireball in the parking lot. Boom, cliffhanger. Raw went off the air with WWE essentially telling the world that Vince McMahon was dead. WWE then ran with the bit hard. The official WWE.com website published a story treating the death as completely real, talking about firefighters and federal agents investigating an apparent explosion. They blurred kayfabe and reality so aggressively that real news outlets reportedly called WWE to confirm. The stock dipped about 1.8%. Donald Trump, fresh off his Battle of the Billionaires WrestleMania storyline with Vince, actually called WWE headquarters genuinely concerned that his friend had been killed in a real explosion. Triple H later told the story on the Opie and Anthony show, noting how many people called in panic thinking Vince had actually died. The stunt was a controlled pyro effect filmed in advance with a rigged vehicle. Vince was never in any danger. The plan was for the storyline to roll out for weeks, with Vince eventually revealed to have faked his own death. Accomplices uncovered, suspects named. Some reports suggested Mr. Kennedy was being set up as the culprit for a major main event push. Then real life took the storyline behind the woodshed. Less than 2 weeks later, on June 24th and 25th, 2007, the Chris Benoit double murder-suicide tragedy happened. WWE had a real death on its hands, and Vince had to appear on the next Raw in an empty arena to address the actual loss. The fictional limo death was quietly buried, never resolved, never spoken of officially again. WWE filmed a kayfabe funeral for the angle that never aired and now exists as Wrestling Lost Media. Vince has never gone deep on regrets about the angle, but the timing alone made it one of the most awkwardly aborted storylines in wrestling history. And while faking your death was bad timing, parodying interracial relationships for cheap laughs was bad on a whole different level. Vince hit Shelton Benjamin with racial stereotypes. Monday Night Raw, November 22, 2004. ABC's Monday Night Football had just aired a controversial promo featuring NFL star Terrell Owens and Desperate Housewives actress Nicolette Sheridan in a towel in a locker room in a sexually charged setup that drew tens of thousands of complaints to the FCC, partly for sexual content and partly for the racial implications of a white woman aggressively pursuing a black athlete. WWE, sensing an opportunity to be even more crass than ABC, decided to parody it. Shelton Benjamin, then Intercontinental Champion, walked into the locker room and found Trish Stratus wearing nothing but a large bath towel. Trish flirted, dropped the towel suggestively. She was wearing a bikini underneath, not actually nude, and Shelton hustled out of the room to head to his match. Cool parody. Could have ended there. Vince McMahon, however, decided to put his own special seasoning on it. Vince burst in playing the outraged moralist, ranting about the moral fabric of America disintegrating. Then he turned to Shelton, who had already left, and called out the racial overtones of the scene. The line that gets him in trouble to this day. "Shelton, you may not realize this, but you're an African American, and everybody knows that African Americans are attracted to Canadian white women with broken noses." He kept going, ranting about how the FCC wouldn't tolerate it, how this is the WWE, not the NFL, and damn sure not the NBA. Then, in classic Vince hypocrisy fashion, Trish dropped the towel a second time and leapt into Vince's arms, and Vince caught her with a smile, instantly abandoning the moral panic he had just performed. Shelton Benjamin himself, in a 2025 interview on Maven Huffman's YouTube channel, recalled the bit fondly. He said they rehearsed once, Vince ad-libbed some of the lines, and Shelton was on board because, in his words, who was it really hurting? He clarified that Trish wasn't actually naked under the towel. He admitted some mild jealousy about Trish jumping into Vince's arms instead of his. The segment hasn't aged well. The everybody knows stereotype framing is the kind of line that gets a CEO fired in 2026, and the whole bit reads now as a white billionaire making racial generalizations on national television and calling it satire. It's frequently cited alongside the Survivor Series 2005 segment as evidence that Vince's edgy comedy era had a serious blind spot. But for sheer creative bankruptcy, even the racial parody segment couldn't match what Vince approved for Triple H and Kane in 2002. The Katie Vic necrophilia storyline. October 21st, 2002. Triple H wanted to mentally destroy Kane in their feud, and Vince McMahon greenlit a storyline where Kane was accused of having sex with the corpse of his dead girlfriend, Katie Vic. Yes, you read that right. Necrophilia, on Monday Night Raw, approved by adults, aired on national television. The setup had Triple H accusing Kane of getting drunk, crashing his car with Katie inside, killing her, and then committing necrophilia with her body. Kane vehemently denied the necrophilia portion, but admitted to the drunk driving accident in his version. The feud built for weeks. Then came the funeral home segment, which is widely considered the absolute lowest point in WWE creative history. The segment showed exclusive footage, supposedly of Kane at Katie Vic's funeral. The footage was actually Triple H wearing a full Kane mask and singlet, standing over an open casket containing a mannequin dressed as Katie Vic. The funeral home was a real working funeral home, reportedly with an actual wake happening on the other side of the wall during filming. Triple H, dressed as Kane, climbed the punchline. The line was, "I screwed her brains out," while pretending to throw mannequin brains at the camera. Vince McMahon reportedly loved this segment, laughing uncontrollably backstage and repeating, "screwed your brains out" for days afterward, which according to Bruce Pritchard made multiple crew members so uncomfortable they reportedly quit. Some staff at the production were so offended by what they were filming that they walked out. Bruce Pritchard has been candid on his Something to Wrestle podcast about how the segment came together. He confirmed Vince personally pushed the angle hard, loved his toilet humor, and overrode internal objections from creative team members. Pritchard has since called it a collective failure that should never have made it to air. Triple H himself has expressed regret. In multiple interviews, he's recalled questioning the angle while it was happening, asking what they were doing, but ultimately performing it as directed. Jim Ross called the whole storyline an embarrassment to professional wrestling on his Grilling JR podcast. Jonathan Coachman called it one of the most repulsive, disgusting storylines of all time. And the original plan was even worse. Scott Vick, played by former WCW star Sick Boy, was supposed to debut at WrestleMania to avenge his sister Katie. That got scrapped mercifully when WWE realized they had already gone too far. Katie Vick remains the gold standard for WWE storylines that didn't just age poorly, but were rotten the moment they were greenlit, perfectly capping a list of moments Vince McMahon's company would love for everyone to forget. forget. Thanks, guys, and that will be all for now. To enjoy more engaging clips, be sure to click on the card showing on the screen.